You awaken in a stone room inside an ancient castle. As you move through the stone halls, as they twist and turn, you can feel the ground shake beneath your feet. As you exit the castle, you see the stone walls around you crumbling, and you smell something burning. Turning around, you see the town is burning as you hear loud, ominous roars. Your eyes instantly dart up to the sky. A glint of red flashes through the smoke as you see the monster's full shape. A dragon is attacking. Next to you, an old man in robes chants unknown words as a small mote of fire shoots from his hands. As a girl with strangely pointed ears shoots her bow at the dragon, you find a sword and shield in your hands as you charge at the dragon. If this sounds interesting to you, then Dungeons and Dragons is for you. Dragons is a fantasy role-playing game that was created in 1974 by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. It was originally made in the Midwestern United States, specifically Minnesota and Wisconsin. There are many additions to the game, with 5th edition, known as 5e, being the most recent, and 4e, 3.5e, 3e, 2e, AD&D, 1e, and 0e, or original D&D, being the older editions. Dungeons & Dragons is currently owned by Wizard of the Coast, who also own games that are popular, such as Magic the Gathering. I have played Dungeons & Dragons 5e for over a year now, and I am very experienced with the system. I have DM'd, which means I've ran, and I've played in many games. Today, I will show you how to first assign stats, how to I will then also show how to use attacks, and then how to cast spells. Okay, so to create your character, first you must establish what your ability scores are. An ability score is over here. An example would be strength. Each ability score determines different things. Your strength is how strong you are. For example, how well you can crush a tomato. Your dexterity is how agile or dexterous you are. For example, how you could throw a tomato. Your constitution is how well you can resist things such as being sick. Uh, an example is if you can eat a rotten tomato, how if you cannot feel bad afterwards or feel sick. Your intelligence is that you can determine that a tomato is actually a fruit. Wisdom is determining that although it's a fruit, you probably shouldn't put it in fruit salad. Your charisma is how well you can it's your force of personality, how well you can sell that tomato to other people. So in the default, you start with these ability scores: 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, and 8. You assign each one to one of the stats to determine what your character is good at. For example, if I'm making a character that's a sword fighter, I would probably want to have my 15 be a strength. I'd probably want my dexterity to be a 14, my constitution to be a 13. So now here's some other choice depending on what your character is like. And your intelligence, if your character is smart, let's say this one is. That would be a 12. Your wisdom, your average, but you're a little bit on the shyer side, then your charisma will be an 8. These correspond to your modifiers. Every ability score will give you a modifier based on 2s. At 10, as seen in our wisdom, it's just flat. A commoner has 10s and everything. That's an average person. Essentially, you will always have if you have just 10s and everything, you have no bonus, and you will 1 in 20 chance perfectly succeed something. Now, your modifiers, if you have an 8, for example, you have a -1 to your rolls. So let's say you're trying to roll, let's look at a skill. Let's say you're trying to persuade someone, because that's based on your charisma modifier, but you have a -1. So that means that you will have issues which you have to subtract from your roll. So you'll take away the 1. But for example, your strength is a +2. So if you're trying to do something athletic, like you're trying to push someone down, for example, then you would add a +2 because you're stronger with it. Proficiency is another thing. For example, if you have this is your proficiency bonus. If you're proficient in a skill, you essentially add your bonus to that roll. So instead of being a +2, if you're proficient in athletics, you have a +4. That means that you're particularly good at it. Onto an attacks. For example, we'll throw in a short sword. Short sword, it will use strength as your modifier. And the short sword does 1d6 damage, meaning you roll a d6. What this means is that you will roll this on your d6, and that you will add your strength modifier afterwards. Damage type basically means if it's weak or resistant, but that's not relevant right now, so don't focus on that. Your hit points is determined by your hit dice or class. Fighters, they use a d10 for their hit dice. When you start, you always start with the maximum, which is 10, and you add your constitution, so you have 11 hit points at level 1. If this is reduced to 0, you fall unconscious. So, to roll your short sword attack, you want to take the bonus, which is your strength mod plus your proficiency in this case, which is a +4. We will use a dice rolling application, as we will not be using real dice for this, although they work exactly the same. So, to see if your attack hits, you roll a d20, and then you add your modifier. So we rolled a 9, and we add 4. That would make it up to a 13. Now, this is going against the character's armor class. For example, your armor class is always 10 plus your dexterity, so 10 plus 2. If you're wearing armor, it may be higher. If you have a lower dex, it may be lower. For a AC 12, the attack on the short sword would have to beat or match the AC. In this case, a 13 beats a 12. If it was a 12, it would beat the 12. If it was an 11, it would not. A 1 will always fail a roll, no matter how low the AC is, and a 20 will always hit, no matter how high the AC is, if you roll that a natural. And then you roll the damage. So in this case, we do 1d6. We did 2. We did an additional 2, so we did 4 piercing damage. Another case is spells. So a spell, we'll use a cantrip. This cantrip is called Firebolt. Spells do not use this, they use a spellcasting modifier. In this case, we will use intelligence. Spells have different things, they do not always have a bonus. In this case, Firebolt is just 1d10 fire damage. We will roll a d20, and we got a 3. This would miss, meaning it does no damage. However, cantrips are infinite use abilities. Other spells, such as Magic Missile, are first level and require spell slots. For example, if you have 2 spell slots and you use Magic Missile, you have to take one away. If you use all your spell slots, you can no longer cast a spell of that level. Although, if you have a second level spell slot, you can use that to cast a first level spell. Next up, we will talk quickly about certain things. There is also a unique thing about the damage cantrips. As you level, they will get stronger. So, for example, at level 1, this does 1d10. At level 5, it will do 2d10, for an example, as the damage cantrip scale in power. This is important to recognize because it allows the spellcaster, such as a wizard, if they run out of spells, they can still do something with their cantrips. To conclude, in D&D, you make and play the role of a unique character that you create, in which you roleplay, act as your character, while rolling dice in combat to see if your attacks hit and how powerful they are. Founded by Gary Gygax in 1974, Dungeons & Dragons is just as much a part of Wisconsin history as groups like the Packers are. So the next time that you see a dragon, you know what to do. Roll those dice, and let's see if you can't slay that dragon.